I didn't care more than words can say, if I didn't care, would I feel this way? If this isn't love, then why do I thrill? And what makes my head go round and round while my heart stands still? If I didn't care, would it be the same? Would my every prayer begin and end with just your name? And would I be sure that this is love beyond compare? Would all this be true if I didn't care for you?
If I didn't care, honey child, more than words can say. If I didn't care, would I feel this way? And darling, if this isn't love, then tell me, why do I thrill so much? And honey child, what is it that makes my head go round and round while my heart just stands still so much?
If I didn't care, would it be the same? Would my every prayer begin and end with just your name? And would I be sure that this is love beyond compare? Would all this be true if I care for you?
Don't forget, anybody offering you a hand of charity has their other hand in your pocket. Every man for himself. It's the Rapture way.
Up and running for the wherever you are. I hope it's a good one. I'm gonna gonna try to keep the music. And I'll do my best to talk over it. Should be mostly a very chill, relatively quiet stream. I'm really excited to do a little bit of content in honor of Spooky Month. And so I have picked out this book to share with you all this morning. It's called Spooky Lakes, 25 Stray and Mysterious Lakes that dot our planet. And this is by Geo Rutherford. Let me see if I can. Not quite. Okay. This is a very large book. Here we go. Look at that gorgeous illustration. So that's Geo Rutherford, and she is a limnologist, or has a background in limnology, which is the study of lakes. Very fun. I didn't know there was a word for that, and I didn't know it was such a fun word. So, word of the month, I guess. Not only is this book factual and informative, but it is also just full of these gorgeous illustrations that are done by Geo herself. So I actually pre-ordered this book months ago because I just knew it was going to be gorgeous, and I'm so happy to have recently received it just in time for spooky season. Also, in honor of us doing Spooky Lakes, here is my little Nuvulette monster dragon cup ladle thing. So he's just gonna sit here. And I also thought it would be thematically appropriate to put on a little bit of Bioshock, Rapture, background ambiance. We are doing spooky, and I know Rapture is technically in the ocean, but spooky large bodies of water, I think it counts, right? Okay. Camera a bit. Oop, going up. There we go. Perfect. Okay. And I love that even the pages that are blank have this like watercolor effect. Very fun for me. Just beautiful. On. Dead on. There we go. To Sandra, who loves rocks and scary movies and named her daughter Geo, having a science mom is the best. And this initial illustration in the front here is Lake Biwa in Japan, one of the world's oldest lakes and home to a variety of migratory birds and temples. Something fun about this illustration in particular is that hidden throughout the book are little ghosts, right? And so here's our very first one. Gonna cradle now. Not quite. Yeah, that'll do. All right. Of course, here is our table of contents. All of our lovely lakes that I am excited to go through. And let's just start at the very beginning, right? And read this section.
Dr. Steinman has a solution. Come see him at Aesthetic Ideals in the Medical Pavilion. Dr. Steinman will make a new woman out of you. Guaranteed.
There we go. Okay. Introduction. Welcome to the fascinating world of limnology. Explorers. Limnology is the study of lakes, So get ready to set sail on an adventure to discover some of the strangest lakes that dot our planet. Lakes are not always peaceful bodies of water. Many hold mysteries and surprises that will give you goosebumps on your arms and chills up your spine. Imagine a lake so deep it could swallow the Empire State Building whole, or a lake filled with lava in the belly of a volcano. Or how about a lake that is so salty it can mummify animals who fall into it? Me. Who knew the natural world could be so spooky? It's not ghosts or ghouls that make these lakes creepy, but instead natural phenomena, scientific oddities, human interactions, environmental disasters, or the mystery of what lies beneath the surface. But first, what is a lake? A lake is typically a large body of water surrounded by land. Lakes vary greatly in size, depth, shape, and even color, and they are found all over the world, from the icy polar regions to tropical rainforests. Some lakes are freshwater, some are saltwater, and some are a mix of both. Some lakes are so small we call them ponds. Other lakes were named long ago when ancient civilizations thought they were seas, like the Caspian Sea, which is a lake, or the Dead Sea, which is also a lake. Some lakes were just inaccurately named, like Lake Pontchartrain, which is more of an estuary, and Lake Maracaibo, which is a bay. Some lakes completely defy definition and challenge our understanding of what a lake is, such as when a lake is filled not with water, but instead with lava, tar, boiling acid, or toxic sludge. I would not want to be in the toxic sludge lake. Just like living beings, lakes are born, mature, grow old, and eventually die. Most lakes on Earth are barely 18,000 years old. That might seem old, but compared to the oldest river in the world, Australia's Finke River, which is around 400 million years old, lakes are extremely young. Lakes form in lots of different ways. Some lakes are created by glaciers, which are massive sheets of ice that move slowly over land and carve out depressions in Earth's surface that eventually fill with water. Other lakes are made when volcanoes go dormant or when earthquakes reshape the landscape. In a few rare cases, a lake can even be created by a meteorite, a colossal rock from outer space that, when it strikes Earth, leaves a pit on the surface that eventually fills with water. Some lakes are human-made, others for various purposes such as irrigation, hydropower, drinking water, or as a hiding place for waste. Every lake has an interesting story to tell, but the 25 lakes in this book are some of the most captivating and extraordinary on the planet Earth. Are you ready to take the plunge? Let's dive in. Alright, but before we turn the page, let's look for some ghosts, okay? And these beautiful illustrations. So over here we have like a crocodilian friend. Spooky graves. Oh, that is a ghost. And I think this might be a little tiny ghost. These are just mushrooms, I think. Although, maybe there is a hiding ghost. right. I think we're gonna pass over the lake facts here. We can come back and like breeze through them, but I think these are mostly just like generalized facts, not about any particular lake. Ooh, Lake Superior. This is a good one to start with. The Great Lakes up in northeastern uh, United States are very spooky, as we're about to hear about some of that. Superior. Continent, North America. Location, United States and Canada. Max depth, 1,332 feet or 406 meters for our metric friends. Surface area, 31,700 miles squared or 82,103 kilometers squared. And we have a little geo marker here. Chock full of shipwrecks, Lake Superior is a graveyard for thousands of people who have perished there. There is a rich and intricate history of ships navigating the Great Lakes' vast waters because they serve as vital shipping highways through the eastern North American continent from the Atlantic Ocean to Lake Superior. However, the sheer scale of Lake Superior means it can be incredibly dangerous, and on windy days, waves can reach up to 29 feet. It's 8 meters high. That's taller than a two-story house. During storms, these these massive waves can engulf ships, dragging them down to a watery tomb. Little blurb says Sweetwater Seas. Great Lakes are a group of 5 interconnected freshwater lakes located in eastern North America, straddling the border between the United States and Canada, comprising Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. They collectively form the largest freshwater system on Earth by surface area and volume. These vast bodies of water hold about 21% of the world's freshwater supply. The largest lake in North America, Lake Superior, is so big that sometimes people refer to it as an inland sea. It would take 4 to 5 days to drive around the perimeter and over 2 days to walk across the lake from Marquette to Michigan. The Terrace Bay, Ontario, assuming you could walk on water. On average, the lake is around 500 feet or 152 meters deep, which is deeper than most lakes in the world. But at its deepest point, it stretches to 1,332 feet or 406 meters below the surface. There is so much water in Lake Superior that it holds 10% of all available unfrozen freshwater in the world. Many of the shipwrecks in Lake Superior have never been found. Lost pieces of history, frozen in time at the bottom of the lake. Some of the known locations are open to divers, but when the ships contain human bodies, they are considered graveyards and can be off limits. One such site is the Edmund Fitzgerald, lost in the storm of 1975 and arguably the most famous shipwreck of the Great Lakes. The crew of 29 floats inside the hull of the ship, 17 miles or 27 kilometers offshore, and 500 feet or 152 meters below the surface. Relatives of the deceased have requested that divers not intrude, so no bodies have been recovered from the wreckage. The families of the lost loved ones consider the ship at the bottom of the Lake Superior to be a tomb for their remains. Shipwrecks galore. Isle Royale is a national park in Michigan and the largest island on Lake Superior. Surrounded by more than 400 smaller islands, more than 25 shipwrecks have been lost along its rocky shoreline since 1839. The nearby indigenous tribes discovered the island, taking birch bark canoes over the treacherous waters in search of copper. The first large wooden vessel known to fall prey to the rocky island was the American Fur Trade Company ship Madeline in 1839. And of course, I just want to briefly show you these beautiful illustrations covering what we talked about, and we're going to look for some ghosts. So we've got a lighthouse overlooking some extremely choppy water, and I think this little fellow right here and here are ghosts. Slowly pan over. Any more? This is Geo's kind of representation of the Fitzgerald here and what that might have looked like. More ghosts. I think those are the only on this page. Set of pages. Of the 350 shipwrecks at the bottom of Lake Superior, there is one particularly famous steamship called the SS Kamloops. At 250 feet or 76 meters long and 2,226 tons, 2019 metric tons, this steel freighter was a relatively small vessel for the Great Lakes in the 1920s. For 3 years, the ship's responsibility was to carry cargo between Montreal, Quebec, and Thunder Bay, Ontario. The Great Lakes often freeze in the winter, with ice sometimes covering the entire surface. The shipping industry would continue to move cargo until late into the winter months, with the occasional ship getting frozen in the ice or disappearing in a winter storm. In early December 1927, the SS Kamloops was traveling between Lake Huron and Lake Superior. The crew was headed to the far west edge of the enormous lake, aiming for the docks at Thunder Bay. Good morning, Swap. Or afternoon, evening. I hope you're having a good day. Here's each trip. I think you are referring to how long it takes to get from one end to the other, right? It would take 4 to 5 days to drive around the perimeter and over 2 days to walk across, if one could walk on water. Yay! I'm glad you're enjoying it. In honor of this being the month of Halloween, I figured a fun bit of spooky nonfiction might be in order. So this is Spooky Lakes, 25 Strange and Mysterious Lakes That Dot Our Planet. And we are starting with um, the Great Lakes in North America, the ever spooky Lake Superior. So, we're just discussing this particular wreck, the wreck of the SS Kamloops, right now. So they were in 1927, right? They were traveling between Lake Huron and Lake Superior. They were headed for Thunder Bay. Um, the weather was clear as they made their way through the locks at Sault Ste. Marie, but a northern wind was brewing, carrying an aggressive winter storm with it. The temperatures dropped below freezing while the winds picked up to over 30 miles per hour. That's 48 kilometers per hour. And the snow began to fall on the black waters of Lake Superior. The SS Kamloops was last seen steaming toward Isle Royale at dusk on December 6th, heavily coated with ice. The 22 crew members aboard were never seen alive again. The blizzard raged from December 7th to 8th with frigid below zero temperatures, waves upward of 26 feet, that's 8 meters, and dense fog coating the surface of the lake. Multiple ships were reported missing, and the search for the SS Kamloops only began in earnest on December 12th. That's 4 days after the storm subsided. The rescuers had little hope of finding survivors in the harsh winter conditions, but scoured the shorelines nonetheless.
Witness the origins of the most important discovery in Rapture's history.
Yeah. Months later, in May of 1928, bodies were discovered on the northern shore of Isle Royale by a fisherman. The bodies, wearing life preservers stenciled with the words Kamloops, were found alongside fragments of a lifeboat and oars. The remains were heavily decomposed, and only 5 of the 9 recovered corpses could be identified and returned to their families. A year after the SS Kamloops disappeared, a message in a bottle was found across Lake Superior over 150 miles or 241 kilometers away from Isle Royale. The handwritten note was penned by Alice Bettridge, a young assistant stewardess on the ship. The mangled paper told of the wreck and how she made it to shore. She wrote, "I am the last one left alive, freezing and starving to death on Isle Royale. I just want Mom and Dad to know my fate." I suppose, in a way, her final wish was honored. It took over a year after her initial disappearance, but eventually, poor Alice's parents would learn of their daughter's ultimate fate. Of course, here we have the Geo's, interpretation of what that might have been like. Here we have um, a life preserver with Kamloops on it. Presumably this is Alice, or meant to be Alice. Here we can see her desperate message in a bottle, her last presiding wish to be known, what her fate was. And here we see, I think, her washing ashore on Isle Royale, and being just kind of the last one, and knowing that probably they are not going to be found. And here, I believe, is again like another illustration of an antique photograph of what the Kamloops might have looked like when she was seaworthy or lakeworthy, I suppose. Yeah, right? Isn't that spooky? Could you imagine being the one to find that message in a bottle, right? Like, and feeling like, oh gosh, there's this person out there, and she's already long gone. Yeah. Because I knew a lot of these stories were going to be coming back from the 20s and 30s, I kind of thought that maybe some BioShock kind of Rapture radio would be um, some spooky atmosphere. You can kind of hear the creaking and the dripping from being in the city and the leaking. Um, but then you also have that juxtaposed against this very like cheery kind of antique music. I think the only thing I could have done better would have been to pick Fallout music. Um, but the Fallout music doesn't have the benefit of this like creaky, drippy kind of background sound to it. So I hope this is good. Oh, you need to finish BioShock 2, only the first. The first is quite a piece though, so I don't think you're missing out on too terribly much. Or is it Infinite I'm thinking about that gets really weird? Either way, they really jumped the shark at a certain point. All right, let's do one or two more pages, I think, in the Kamloops. So yeah, a couple more pages of Lake Superior. It wasn't until 1977, 50 years after the SS Kamloops disappeared, that divers found the wreck beneath the black waters of Lake Superior. Bacteria that typically would have destroyed the hull cannot survive in deep, cold, fresh water. So the metal hull and cargo were in near perfect condition, undisturbed at the bottom of the frigid lake. The wreck rests in pitch black conditions, with only portions of the ship visible at a given time. Illuminated by lamps of visiting divers, a flagpole emerging from the dark, a barrel, a ladder. The only sound is the divers' own breathing and the bubbles percolating from their suits. The SS Kamloops wreck still contains cargo from that last voyage: candy lifesavers, toothpaste, wooden barrels, and farming tractors. The divers that discovered the steamer were also greeted by the long-lost crew of the Kamloops. They looked as fresh as the day they drowned. One crewmate in particular never left his post in the belly of the ship. His corpse, known as Old Whitey, floats around the boiler room, where currents from the diver's fins made it seem like the body was following them around the waterlogged space. Considering this corpse was nearly 50 years old, the lack of decomposition shocked the divers. His flesh seemed to glow from within, a bright spot in the rusted metal boiler room. If someone dies in a very cold freshwater lake, their body doesn't decay the way it would in other situations. Typically, bacteria helps to break down bodily remains and eventually leaves behind a skeleton. Lake Superior is so deep and cold that there is a lack of bacteria at the bottom of the lake. The cold, fresh water can generate a chemical reaction between minerals in the water and human skin that results in a substance called adipocere, otherwise known as corpse wax. The chemical reaction is called saponification, which is a process that turns body fat into a soap-like substance. The resulting adipocere is also known as corpse wax. Oh, see, I already said it. Or the fat of graveyards. The wax has a soft, greasy appearance when it first starts to form, but as it ages, the wax hardens and turns brittle. Saponification stops the decay process in its tracks, so a soap mummy can remain intact for potentially hundreds of years, even after the bones have begun to disintegrate. Old Whitey, one of the most famous permanent residents of the Great Lakes, is preserved this way, which accounts for his glowing aspect. And of course, I will show you the beautiful illustrations here, right? So here we have what Geo imagines the divers sort of must have been seeing as they came upon this wreck. Um, and of course, over here we have kind of an illustration of Old Whitey himself. You can look this up. There are photographs of him online. I am going to, of course, give a big old content warning, viewer beware disclaimer here that if you look him up, he is a mummified corpse. So, please be advised. Even though he is very well preserved, still it is a very spooky sight to see him. And of course, they can't really remove him. He is kind of stuck in place. And let's see up here, we have another really cool little illustration of a underwater grave. But poor fella. Yeah, I mean, I think it is quite tragic that they lost their lives in this way. And in that way it is tragic, but in some regards, right? Like being mummified and preserved for hundreds and hundreds of years is um quite the way to go. I mean, pharaohs and kings and great men and women throughout history have attempted such feats of eternal preservation or entombment. And here this fella is successfully preserved for hundreds of years um, by an act of nature, right? An act of nature that drove that storm in and sunk the ship and preserved him. So, in a way, he's been given the king treatment, right? The royal treatment. Skill issue. Just sail on a frozen lake. All right, Swippity. Um, you show him how it's done next time. How do we feel about one more lake for today? Since there's 25 lakes in this book, there's certainly less than 25 days left in Spooky Month, so we've got lots to cover. So I think we can indulge in at least one more this morning. What do we think? Also, I'm going to apologize if I'm not pronouncing any of this stuff correctly. This is the way I know to pronounce it. Please feel free to reach out to me on Discord if you have a better way, or send me a link, either way. So this is Rupkund Lake. This is located in Asia, India to be precise. Max depth of over 10 feet or 3 meters. And the surface area is a bit greater than 1 mile squared. And here's our little kind of locator. In the Himalayan mountains, some 16,470 feet, that's 5,020 meters, above sea level, Rupkund Lake is a frozen puddle in an isolated snowy valley for most of the year. When the season becomes warm enough to melt the ice, the solitude of the lake is exposed as untrue, as hundreds of human skeletons were hidden beneath the snow, an eerie army of mysterious origins. Frequently referred to as Skeleton Lake, we still don't know why there are so many human remains there despite all our modern technological advances. This glacial lake resides between the towering mountains of the Himalayas, a 5-day hike from the closest Uttarakhand settlement. The size and depth of the lake fluctuates, but in 1942, a forest ranger discovered the bones in and around the lake, peeking out among the rocks and snow after a thaw. He reported an estimated 3 to 800 human skeletons, some with flesh still attached. The discovery was made public in the late 1950s, sparking great interest and prompting ongoing investigations. Good morning, I. You were waiting for this? Okay, well, I'm glad we're here then. I have been loving this book. It's one of my new absolute favorites. Last I saw, it was sold out online, but I have heard that you can still get copies at Barnes and Noble, um, depending on where you are. So, otherwise, I'm sure they will restock soon because this is such a banger. Early on, there were a number of hypotheses: ill-fated explorers, religious burial site, soldiers attempting a secret invasion, or was it Tibetan traders on the Silk Road who died from an epidemic? Archaeologists, anthropologists, and geneticists all attempted to explain the presence of so many bones at the shallow lake. Local folk songs tell a story of an ill-fated pilgrimage where a goddess sent a warning in the form of a blizzard. Artifacts such as bangles made from seashells and glass indicated the legend may have elements of the truth. The group may have been on a Hindu pilgrimage called Nanda Devi Raj Jat, where pilgrims are adorned with jewelry and ornaments. Forensic analysis then found evidence of trauma from heavy objects on some of the skulls. The Himalayans' notoriety for hailstorms, combined with the lack of weapons at the lake, led scientists to conclude that the most likely explanation was a single mass casualty of pilgrims from a hail in the 9th century. For years, the mystery had been put to rest until new science raised more questions. In 2010, a technological advance led to renewed interest in the Rupkund mystery. Scientists studied 38 skeletons from the lake and found that the bones dated to vastly different time periods over the last millennium. The bones have been dated from the 9th to the 19th century. There were men, women, and children among the bones, but none of the skeletons were related. While most were of South Asian ancestry, among some of the remains were possibly Eastern Mediterranean. This is particularly strange because there aren't any historical clues as to why people from a place such as Crete were in the far reaches of the Himalayas 1,000 years ago. Despite the persistent mystery, the site remains unpreserved and constantly disturbed by rock slides, ice, and trekkers who desecrate the skeletal remains by moving them and even taking them home as souvenirs. No one knows how or why the people died centuries apart, but all their bones ended up scattered around a small glacial lake in the Himalayas. So, for now, skeletons and artifacts at the bottom remain frozen, patiently waiting as evidence for someone to find out what occurred at Rupkund Lake. Skeleton Pass. Interested in visiting Rupkund Lake yourself? Starting from Lahajung, India, It's over 30 miles or 53 kilometers of steep mountain terrain through snow-covered passes. An 8-day trek up will take you into a bone-chilling high altitude. Just remember, when you get there, don't remove the human remains. That is extremely spooky. Alright, let's take a look. Let's see if we can find some hidden ghosties. So we've got Geo's illustration of the lake. It's so spooky because it's also so shallow. Alright, I don't see any on that page. Are we seeing any here? Any hidden specters? I actually don't see any here either. Are there none on this page? Maybe. We got another lake. Ghosts on this page. Maybe she figured there were enough ghosts in the form of the um, dozens of skeletons. Oh, is Swap still here? I forgot to play his.
I've got your back.
Let's see. For 4 minutes. Let's start again then. Back from the beginning. Yeah, that's just for you, Swap. Alright. One more. Let's do one more. 3 is a good number. Okay, she did say there are some pages she missed. Good to know, so that I don't pour over all of them. Alright. So I think this is going to be our first spooky lake that is spooky because of humans. Lake Karache. I hope I said that right. And here we see her illustration, a prototype atomic bomb created by the Soviet Union with a worker for scale. Lovely. So this is on the continent of Asia, located in Russia. Max depth, well, it's filled in, and a surface area of less than a mile squared. One of the most radioactive locations on Earth is a lake. The story of Lake Karachay takes us back to the beginning of the Cold War, around 1945. The United States was the first nation to successfully detonate nuclear bombs, dropping them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, which helped end World War II. This brought about a global race to increase nuclear capability, especially between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Soviets built a secret nuclear facility called Mayak near the Russian town of Kishdim in the southern Ural Mountains. The plant was built quickly between 1945 and 1948, designed to produce radioactive plutonium for the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons program. And here we will just pop over to quickly read the Cold War. Not that there's anything quick about the Cold War, but the Soviet Union was a communist state in Eastern Europe and Northern Asia that existed from 1922 to 1991. The Soviets, the United States, and their respective allies were in a tense and often hostile rivalry called the Cold War that lasted from the end of World War II until the early 1990s. There were no physical confrontations, rather, the two sides engaged in an arms race, espionage, and other political intrigue. Just kind of read up here so we can get an idea. Nuclear fuel cycle. The Mayak nuclear facility was designed to refine uranium, which is only one part of the nuclear fuel cycle. The beginning of the cycle starts with mining uranium. After it's refined, uranium can be used to fuel nuclear power plants and make atomic bombs. Throughout the cycle, radioactive waste is produced, and that is shown here by her illustration of the kind of life cycle. We have the uranium refining facility, down here to the nuclear power plant, to the waste, radioactive waste, over here to the uranium mine, back up and around, whereas here you can come in and create the atomic bomb. And it can go from the refining facility to waste. All roads lead to waste, fortunately. However, the disposal of radioactive nuclear waste at the Mayak plant became a significant problem within the first year, and millions of gallons of radioactive waste were dumped in nearby lakes and rivers. Lake Karachay, the closest lake to the facility, became the main dumping ground, which resulted in a buildup of radioactive sediment at its bottom. Over time, the lake became so contaminated that the water itself was lethal, and even standing on the shoreline today is deadly. Yeah, the pictures definitely are a really huge point of attraction for me about the book. I love the illustrations. I do wish there had been some photography involved, but I understand why that was a necessary limitation. Elden's Rings creator would love that. Like, exactly. Well, they would love it more if it was a swamp. But if it can't be a swamp, being a lake is probably the next best thing. And here we see an invisible killer. Acute radiation sickness occurs when the human body is damaged by extremely high amounts of radiation over a short period of time. This is incredibly rare and usually only occurs after people are in direct contact with nuclear power plant disasters or atomic bombs. When it does happen, animals and humans develop symptoms such as rashes, extreme nervousness, nausea, and vomiting. In worst case scenarios, acute radiation sickness can cause long term illness or death. Notable cases occurred following the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in Pripyat, Ukraine. First, let's take a look at these illustrations in question. So we've got a truck dumping waste into a lake that is bright green, not for any fun reasons, but because it is presumably highly radioactive. Um, it's a beautiful color, but not for a lake. And there, of course, is her showing the high energy radiation particles passing through a human body, leading to some unfortunate damage. In 1957, an explosion known as the Kishtim disaster occurred at the Mayak facility. A cooling system in a storage tank containing highly radioactive liquid waste failed, causing a massive chemical explosion that released a large amount of radioactive material into the environment. And of course, above here we have the illustration underground radioactive storage containers exploding. The explosion created a radioactive cloud in the atmosphere that spread over thousands of miles, contaminating local villages and agricultural land. The impact of the disaster was exacerbated by the fact that authorities did not immediately inform the public about the incident, and many people were unaware of the danger. This event is considered one of the worst nuclear accidents in history and is often compared to the more well-known Chernobyl disaster that occurred in 1986. Despite the scale of the Kyshtym disaster, the Soviet government kept it a secret for many years, and it was not until the 1980s that the full extent of the contamination was revealed. As the years passed, the situation at Lake Karachay continued to deteriorate. In the 1960s and 70s, drought began to shrink the lake, and the surrounding area started to dry out. This exposed the highly radioactive sediments on the banks of the lake. Radioactive dust was released into the air and carried throughout the region by the wind, contaminating soil and water. This led to a significant increase in radiation poisoning, radiation-related illnesses, and possibly deaths in the surrounding area. In the 1980s, Lake Karachay was filled in with some 10,000 hollow concrete blocks to prevent sediments from shifting and spreading radioactive particles. However, it wasn't until early 2016 that the lake was further filled in with rock and dirt, effectively converting it into a dry nuclear waste storage facility, albeit located closer to the surface than facilities specifically designed for that purpose. The surrounding region remains contaminated, and the area is still considered to be one of the most polluted sites on Earth. The legacy of Lake Karachay serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of nuclear waste and the importance of responsible disposal and management of radioactive materials. Delicious water, radiation bad. This is why I never drink water. Everybody knows that stuff will kill you. 100% of people who drink water die. Did you guys know that? Isn't that crazy? Plutonium time. Why is Lake Karachay still radioactive after 70 years? Plutonium particles release radiation, which is a type of energy that can be dangerous because it carries a lot of power. The particles can continue to be radioactive for up to 24,000 years. So plan your summer holiday to Lake Karachay in the 27th century. And you should be alright. Dang it, Swamp! Alright, here we go. Hydration. I got my cup here. A little mermaid. Got a mermaid on it. She's not in the radioactive lake, luckily. Gonna switch to Coke Zero now. There is water in it. I mean, there can't be no water. How would that even work? Okay. Think about this. So, okay, there's that illustration. And then, of course, here is the other one with the sort of how I feel like I need to dress to go out most of the time. Like, I don't think there are any ghosts on this page either. Normally, I spot them pretty quickly, like my eye is drawn to them. Whoops. I accidentally may or may not have. Okay, there we go. Sorry. My webcam is my phone, and sometimes the gripper on the tripod thing I have turns my phone into um, like sleep mode, so I just have to be careful. Okay. I think we'll stop there. That's a good amount of spookiness for now. Anybody around? Yeah, let's do Christy Connect. I like her. Sometimes she plays Sonic. Not today, but sometimes. Go. Okay, so I know there aren't very many of us, but please tell Christy hi. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Of course, you're welcome for the read. Come back next time. We'll have another set of spooky lakes to do. I'm hoping to get through a good number of them before Halloween. I guess it's just gonna depend on my sleep schedule. I'll talk to you guys later. And Swippity, if you're still gonna be around, Genshin, Wuthering Waves. Alright guys, talk to you later.